For most of your life, eggs probably had a very simple role: breakfast, a quick scramble, a boiled egg, maybe weekend eggs and toast with the family. Then, somewhere around midlife, the message changed. Careful with egg yolks, they're bad for your cholesterol. After 60, you should stick to egg whites. Too many eggs will hurt your heart. So, wanting to do the right thing, you began to behave. You ordered the egg white omelet. You threw away the yolks just in case. Maybe you stopped eating eggs altogether, switched to cereal or dry toast, and felt secretly proud. I'm being careful. I'm protecting myself. Years passed. At the same time, something quieter began to happen. Names slipped a little more often. You walked into a room and forgot why. You read a paragraph and realized your mind had drifted. You lost the thread of a story or a conversation more than before. And here's the uncomfortable truth that almost no one told you. The very change you made to protect your health after 60 may be starving your brain of one of its favorite nutrients for memory. The mistake is not that you ever ate eggs. The mistake is what you did with the yolk. In this video, I'm not speaking to you as a doctor, but as a guide in well-being and longevity. My goal is simple and direct: to show you how one common egg mistake after 60 can quietly hurt your memory, what modern science actually says about eggs and the brain, and how to rebuild a simple, smart relationship with this food so your mind, your heart, and your independence all benefit. Let's start by looking honestly at the problem. After 60, your brain becomes more sensitive to everything you do and don't do. It reacts to sleep, to stress, to movement, to blood pressure, to blood sugar, to loneliness, and yes, very much, to what you eat. At the same time, your digestion and absorption of nutrients often become less efficient. You may absorb less vitamin B12 from food. You may produce less stomach acid. Your appetite may shrink. That means every bite counts more. Now imagine the typical careful breakfast of many older adults. A piece of white toast with jam, maybe some juice, maybe a few spoonfuls of low-fat yogurt, plenty of carbohydrate, almost no real protein, and very little of the specific nutrients your brain uses to build memory molecules and protect nerve cells. Now compare that to a breakfast of 1 or 2 whole eggs, gently cooked with vegetables and maybe a slice of whole grain bread. Eggs bring high-quality protein, vitamin B12, vitamin D, healthy fats, carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin, and a nutrient that is absolutely central to memory: choline. Here is the heart of the egg mistake. For years, many people over 60 have been throwing away the yolk, the part that contains most of the choline, B12, vitamin D, and lutein, believing they were protecting their heart while unknowingly cutting off an important supply line to their brain. To understand why that matters, we have to talk, calmly and clearly, about choline. Choline is a vitamin-like nutrient that your brain uses for 3 vital jobs. First, it's the main building block for acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter deeply involved in memory, attention, and muscle control. Every time you learn something new, focus on a task, or coordinate your movements, acetylcholine is in the background, carrying messages from neuron to neuron. Second, choline is used to build the membranes, the outer skin, of your brain cells. Those membranes are made of phospholipids, like phosphatidylcholine. Their job is to keep the cell stable and flexible at the same time, to host receptors and channels, and to let signals pass efficiently. Third, choline participates in methylation reactions that help control homocysteine, a compound associated with blood vessel health, including the vessels that feed your brain. Your body can make a little choline on its own, but not enough. You need to bring the rest from outside. And when researchers look at what people actually eat, especially in Western countries, a clear pattern appears. Most adults, and especially older adults, do not reach the recommended intake of choline from their diet. This matters because several large long-term studies have found that people who get more choline, often from foods like eggs, tend to show better cognitive performance and a lower risk of dementia over time compared with those who get less. Other research has shown that specific doses of egg yolk choline can improve certain aspects of verbal memory in adults. In simple language, a brain that regularly receives enough choline seems to age more gracefully than a brain that runs on the minimum. Now here's the twist that connects all of this to your breakfast plate. One whole egg contains a meaningful amount of choline, but the majority of that choline lives in the yolk, not in the white. The yolk is also where most of the B12, vitamin D, vitamin A, and carotenoids like lutein and zeaxanthin are found. The white is mostly protein and water, so when you order an egg white omelet or crack an egg and throw the yolk into the trash, you are not just reducing cholesterol. You are removing a whole bundle of brain nutrients in one movement. For a 30-year-old with a large appetite and an otherwise excellent diet, that might not make much difference. For someone over 60, whose overall nutrient intake is often tighter, whose brain is more vulnerable to small deficits, and whose memory is already under pressure from many directions, it can slowly become a problem. Now, you might be thinking, but weren't we told for years that egg yolks are dangerous? Isn't cholesterol in food bad for the heart? That belief has a history. For decades, dietary guidelines focused strongly on cholesterol in food. Eggs have cholesterol in the yolk, so it seemed logical to blame them for high blood cholesterol and heart disease. Many doctors and dietitians told their patients to avoid yolks completely. But as research improved, something interesting appeared. For most people, the cholesterol they eat has much less impact on their blood cholesterol than the saturated fat in their diet and their overall pattern of eating. Large reviews over the past years have found that in adults with normal cholesterol and without major heart disease, eating up to about 1 egg a day, sometimes even 2, within a healthy pattern, is not associated with higher cardiovascular risk, and may even link to lower risk of death in older adults when eggs are part of a good quality diet. At the same time, studies have connected egg consumption in midlife or later life with better performance on some memory tests, and, in some cohorts, a lower risk of Alzheimer's dementia. Again, that doesn't mean eggs are magic, or that more is always better. It means that the old story, eggs are dangerous for everyone over 60, is far too simple. There are important exceptions. If you have familial hypercholesterolemia, certain genetic cholesterol disorders, advanced heart disease, diabetes with poor control, or if your doctor has specifically asked you to limit eggs, you must follow that professional advice. Your health history always comes first. But for many older adults, the reflex of automatically removing yolks forever is no longer supported by modern evidence. So let's name the egg mistake clearly. The mistake is treating the yolk as the villain and eating decade after decade of egg whites, low-protein breakfasts, and empty calories, leaving your brain undersupplied in choline, B12, vitamin D, and other protective nutrients. There is a second version of the same mistake: removing eggs entirely from your diet because of old cholesterol fear, and not replacing their specific nutrients with anything else. Especially if you don't eat much fish, liver, or soy products, this can drop your choline intake very low. There is also a third version, almost the opposite, that is worth mentioning briefly. Some people eat eggs often, but always in the least brain-friendly way. Fried in lots of butter with processed meats like bacon and sausages, served with refined white bread and sugary drinks. In that case, it's not the egg itself that is the problem. It's the overall package of excess saturated fat, salt, and ultra-processed foods. The solution is not to fear eggs or to worship them. The solution is to use them wisely as part of a brain-friendly pattern. Let's look at what that can actually look like after 60. Imagine your brain as a house you plan to live in for a long time. Choline is both an electrician and a construction worker. It helps maintain the wiring, acetylcholine signals, and repair the walls, cell membranes. Vitamin B12 is a manager of the energy systems and the insulation around cables. Vitamin D and the carotenoids lutein and zeaxanthin protect delicate structures from damage. A whole egg is like a small toolbox that contains pieces for all of these jobs at once. The toolbox is compact, easy to prepare, and relatively affordable, but only if you actually open it. In other words, only if you keep the yolk. Several large cohort studies have followed older adults over many years and found that those who consume eggs in moderation within an overall healthy diet tend to show slower cognitive decline and lower risk of dementia than those who rarely or never eat eggs. Other studies looking specifically at choline intake have found that people who reach moderate choline levels from their diet, often between roughly 200 and 400 milligrams a day, have better memory performance and less cognitive decline over time than those with the lowest intakes. One controlled trial even tested egg yolk choline directly and found improvements in verbal memory after several weeks of daily intake. Again, these are not miracles, and they do not replace sleep, movement, or blood pressure control. But they paint a consistent picture. A steady, moderate supply of choline, very often from foods like eggs, seems to support the brain's ability to remember, adapt, and resist decline. So how do you correct the egg mistake without swinging to extremes? First, you bring back the whole egg in a thoughtful way, as long as your doctor agrees it's appropriate for you. That could mean one whole egg most days, or a pattern like 2 eggs some days and none on others, balancing out to a moderate weekly intake. You are not aiming for 5 or 6 eggs every single day. You are looking for a rhythm that feeds your brain but respects your heart and your overall diet. Second, you pay attention to how you eat your eggs. A hard-boiled egg with a handful of cherry tomatoes and a slice of whole grain bread sends a very different message to your body than 3 eggs fried in butter with bacon and white toast. Gentle cooking methods, boiled, poached, scrambled slowly with a splash of olive oil, baked into a vegetable frittata, help preserve nutrients and avoid adding unnecessary saturated fat. Third, you look at the rest of your plate. Eggs support brain health best when they live inside a generally brain-friendly pattern. Plenty of vegetables, especially leafy greens and cruciferous veggies, regular fish, nuts and seeds, beans and lentils, whole grains, olive oil instead of heavy animal fats, and very little ultra-processed food. In that context, 1 egg a day for many older adults is not a problem. It is a helpful detail in a bigger picture. Fourth, you remember that eggs are not the only source of choline. If you are allergic to eggs, choose not to eat them for personal reasons, or have a medical condition that makes them unsuitable, you can still use this information. The egg mistake for you would be to ignore choline altogether. Instead, you can look for it in foods like soybeans, tofu, tempeh, chicken, turkey, beef, certain fish, and some legumes and seeds. In some cases, your healthcare provider may recommend a choline supplement, often in forms like choline bitartrate, phosphatidylcholine, or citicoline, as part of a broader strategy. For most people over 60, though, eggs are one of the simplest, most concentrated and practical sources of choline they can add to their routine. To make this more real, picture someone like Susan, 68. 10 years ago, her doctor told her to watch her cholesterol, and the only thing she really remembered was avoid egg yolks. She switched to egg white omelets and low-fat cereal. Her cholesterol improved a little, but so did many other things she changed. More vegetables, less red meat. In the last few years, she has started forgetting why she walked into rooms, losing the thread of conversations, misplacing her keys more often. She brushes it off as aging, but it worries her. At a checkup, a new provider asks about her breakfast and her overall diet. They explain that dietary cholesterol is not the enemy it was once thought to be for everyone, that her blood tests look stable, and that her current diet is very low in choline. Together, they design a small change. 3 or 4 mornings a week, she replaces her cereal with a vegetable omelet made from 1 whole egg plus some extra egg white, cooked in a small amount of olive oil, with spinach, onion, and tomato. Other mornings, she has Greek yogurt with nuts and berries. Over months, she doesn't turn into a genius, but she notices something quiet and important. Her mental fog in the late morning is less thick. She feels more present in conversations, and her follow-up blood work still looks good. She didn't flood her life with supplements. She stopped throwing away the part of the egg her brain needed most. Now think of Carlos, 73, who decided years ago that eggs were too risky and removed them completely. He eats toast and jam, drinks coffee, and calls it breakfast. He rarely eats fish, doesn't like liver, and isn't fond of tofu. Over time, his diet has become low not only in choline, but also in B12 and omega-3 fats. His family starts to notice that he repeats the same stories more often, struggles with word finding, and loses track of dates. When he finally accepts a nutritional assessment, the picture is clear. Not enough protein, not enough key brain nutrients, plenty of refined carbs. Again, no one claims that eggs alone will change everything. But by reintroducing a few whole eggs per week, adding fish once or twice a week, and improving his overall pattern, he gives his brain raw materials it hasn't seen in years. Memory issues do not vanish, but the pace of decline slows, and more importantly, he feels engaged again in his own care. Now imagine a couple in their mid-60s. They are both terrified of dementia because they watched a parent fade away. They have tried every brain game online, every new superfood trend, but they still start their day with a big bowl of sweet cereal and fat-free milk, believing it is light and healthy. One evening, they listen to a conference where someone explains the role of choline and eggs in brain aging. It is the first time they have ever heard that egg yolks might be part of the solution instead of the problem. They check with their doctors, who confirm that their cholesterol and blood vessels are well managed and agree that moderate egg intake is safe for them. They decide to try an experiment. For 3 months, they will eat a brain-smart breakfast 3 or 4 days a week. Whole eggs with vegetables, sometimes on whole grain toast, sometimes as a frittata, sometimes boiled with a side of fruit. And on other days, they'll have alternatives like oatmeal with nuts and seeds or yogurt with berries. They also reduce ultra-processed snacks in the evening and go for a daily walk. At the end of those months, their lives are still real and imperfect. They still forget things sometimes, but they feel more stable, less up and down. They feel like they are participating actively in their brain's future, not just waiting to see what happens. The egg mistake has been replaced with an egg strategy. Of course, not everyone can or should eat eggs freely. If you have had a heart attack, stroke, poorly controlled diabetes, or very high LDL cholesterol, your situation might be different. Some recent studies suggest that in people with existing cardiometabolic diseases, high cholesterol intake, including from eggs, may still relate to higher cardiovascular risk. That is why guidance has to be personal. But even in those cases, the lesson of this video still holds. You cannot talk honestly about memory and aging without talking about the nutrients that feed the brain. Choline is one of them. Eggs are one of the richest, easiest sources for many people. If eggs are not an option for you, choline still needs to come from somewhere. So, what can you do with all of this today in practical terms? First, Promise yourself that you will never again make or repeat decisions about your food based only on slogans from decades ago. Your body, your brain, and the science have all moved on. Your habits deserve to catch up. Second, if you have no specific medical reason to avoid eggs, talk with your healthcare provider about where they might fit in your diet now. Ask very directly, given my cholesterol, my heart, and my age, is it reasonable for me to eat one whole egg most days? If the answer is yes, then you know you can safely correct the old egg mistake. If the answer is no, ask, then how can I make sure I get enough choline and B12 for my brain? Third, look at your breakfast tomorrow morning and ask one simple question. Does this meal feed my brain or just fill my stomach? If it is mostly sugar and starch, consider changing just one thing. Swap a pure egg white omelet for an omelet that includes at least one yolk. Swap plain toast for a boiled egg and a piece of fruit. Swap sweet cereal for eggs with vegetables a few days a week. Fourth, remember that your memory is not just a personal convenience. It is one of the foundations of your independence, your confidence, and even your intimacy. When you feel mentally present and clear, you relate differently to your partner, your friends, and your own reflection in the mirror. Taking care of your brain is a way of taking care of all your relationships. If I had to compress everything we've shared into one powerful sentence for you to take away, it would be this. After 60, the real danger is not eating a whole egg. It's spending years throwing away the yolk, and with it the choline, B12, and protective nutrients your brain needs to keep your memories alive. You cannot control every risk in life. Genes, past decisions, and pure chance all play their part. But you can decide, starting now, not to weaken your brain by mistake at breakfast. If this message resonated with you, let it lead to one concrete action. Plan a brain-smart breakfast for the next few days. Write down a question about choline and eggs to ask your doctor. Share this video with someone over 60 who proudly eats egg whites and might not know what they are really giving up. And if you want to keep exploring natural, science-backed ways to protect your memory, your vitality, and your well-being in this stage of life, you can stay close to this community. We will keep translating complex science into clear, practical steps you can actually use. Your brain has not given up on you. It is still rebuilding, still adapting, still listening to every signal you send. The way you treat something as simple as an egg can either quietly weaken that work or gently strengthen it. From now on, you know the difference. The mistake is no longer invisible. The next move is yours.